Hello everybody, my name is Glen, Owen, new market personal trainer, and today we're going to take a look at how tightness and discomfort start. What does that have to do with mobility and strength and endurance, and how can exercise ultimately help you feel more loose, feel more open, feel less discomfort, especially if it's associated with tight, achy muscles. So first and foremost, let's conceptualize and think about this. Why would your body get tight and achy to begin with? And I would put it to you that the reason your body might feel like this is because you have some muscles in your body that may have less endurance, less strength, even less rate of force development, which is the velocity or speed in which they can contract. And those kind of lacks of strength and output ultimately lead to some compensations of the body where some muscles take over for others so that your body can keep working or moving or maintain a posture for a certain amount of time. Allow me, please, to elaborate. This is a force tolerance time graph. And we can see here that we have force tolerance on the y-axis, and coming across on the bottom side here, we have time. So, fictitious scenario to make this digestible, let's say we've got some left hip tightness and there's only fictitiously 2 hip muscles. There are many, many more, but for ease's sake, let's say that's the case. We have muscle number 1 right here. Sorry, the way I write and draw is terrible. Muscle number 2, going to be right here. Perfect. So off the bat, what do we see on this graph? Well, we would see that if we're looking at force tolerance, that muscle number 2 starts with more force output, and over time it can maintain that for longer, which means it has more endurance. Muscle 1 starts with less strength and over time also has less endurance. So we can take any activity that you like to do, sitting, walking, a favorite sport, whatever that might be. Let's go with walking because it's the easiest thing to conceptually think about here. Walking is a mechanical stress, meaning that your body has to generate force and absorb force with every step that you take, so it is fatiguing over time. Albeit for some people, most people maybe low grade, but still a mechanical stress nonetheless. So if I was to draw that stress here on our graph, let's say it's relatively low, but we go for this walk, just like that. So at some point in time during this walk, let's say it's an hour, we'll put 1 hour right over here. I know it's nice and small, but 1 hour on the opposite side of the graph here, and this is when you start at the bottom of the other corner of the graph. So we're walking for 1 hour, and at about the 20 or 30 minute mark, we can see that mechanical stress, as it interacts with muscle number 1, something's changing here. Muscle number 1 is starting to peter out in terms of its endurance and its strength output at this place right here. So what does that mean? Well, if we draw a nice little line to intersect and come up this way, at this point in time, as muscle number 1 starts getting fatigued and tired and can no longer maintain the control of posture or the ability to absorb force or to contract to create angular displacement to propel you forward, something has to change. This muscle can't contribute anymore, so muscle number 2 is going to have to start taking over and doing more work. That, or maybe some of your other structures, like your cartilage, start absorbing more force and they start wearing down sooner. That's how osteoarthritis happens, by the way. But at this point in time, something has to change in your body. Something else has to take over, and it's likely going to be muscle number 2. Another way to think about this would be if you were playing a team sport, let's say tennis. It's you and your partner, and you're playing tennis against 2 other people. Well, what happens when your partner starts running out of steam halfway through the match? Who is to start covering more ground, working harder to start hitting the ball over so you can keep getting points and not lose to your opponents, right? If it's you and the other person, they're getting tired, it's going to be you who has to work overtime, and you're going to get frustrated, uptight, and achy, and that is what happens in your body. Muscle number 2 is going to have to start doing the work for both of these muscles, and so it's going to start getting tight and achy. And what often happens when joints are getting tight and achy, we start losing some range of motion, probably start losing some mobility there because we're getting stressed out, we're getting overworked. And so this is why thinking about the strength and endurance of muscles is so important if your goal is to have lots of mobility and less tightness in your body. So the question then becomes, well, how do we bridge the gap between these two things? And this is where exercise and strength and endurance training all come into play. If we can identify where muscle number 1 is in your body, and again, this is a simple explanation. Muscle number 1 may be a host of different muscles, and muscle number 2 may be a host of other different muscles. But if we can identify where this muscle is, and we can do the appropriate amounts of exercise to improve its function and get it closer to muscle number 2, we're going to be in a much better spot. We're going to feel better. Our body's going to be looser. It's going to have more mobility. So the question then becomes, how do we start working on this area once we've identified it? If we know that the left hip, for example, needs more output, how do we start going about doing that? Well, there's this very, very cool mechanism. It's called post-activation potentiation. Feel free to look it up. Post-activation potentiation is this physiological mechanism where your muscles, every time they contract, the next subsequent muscle contractions will actually improve their ability to contract. You'll be able to do them faster, you'll be able to do them more efficiently, you'll be able to do them stronger. Now there's a caveat, it's to a point. If you just fatigue out an area, guess what? It's toast. We're going to end up right back where we are here. But if we go with small amounts of dosing, with this post-activation potentiation mechanism, we can actually see direct, quick neurological improvements in strength and rate of force development, and sometimes even endurance, by just doing very small, easy reps. What I mean by that is, let's say we identify that you need to have your left hip getting stronger in abduction, bring it out to the side. And we have you do, let's say, 3 easy leg lifts. Not really that fatiguing at all, maybe slightly challenging. That level of stimulation will help improve, transiently at the beginning, muscle number 1's ability to do some work. And we'll get this transient improvement. Transient improvement, Glen, that doesn't really seem like it's helpful. I want to be feeling better and moving better for the long term. I 100% get that. Here's the thing, is that if this area has been so low quality for so long and so tight for months, years even, decades for some people, it's going to take some relearning and re-education of that area a couple times a day, sometimes maybe a little bit more, to start having the body feel way more comfortable using that. So it's not like exercise in a one-time 3-repetition dose is going to make a lifelong change. But what you can do is you can teach your body by doing homework day in and day out, small bouts, 2 to 3 minutes at a time, to slowly have your body learn, hey, this is something comfortable and I can use this over and over again. And once you go through a few weeks of that, for some people a little bit more, some people way less time, you start working on the endurance of that area. So we start potentiating the area, teaching your body that it can use this tissue over and over again by giving it small doses throughout the day of doing exercise geared towards those muscle groups at that joint. And then as that starts feeling better and a little bit less tight, you can start transitioning more into doing exercises that are going to last longer, that are going to maybe increase the amount of muscle that you have in hypertrophy. Or you can do exercises for 20 or 30 repetitions that may be more endurance invoking. But what ends up happening over time, and this is the cool thing, is that we start shifting this curve more and more closer up to where muscle number 2 is. And eventually, the goal being that we get it so far up there that these two things are almost right in line with each other. Very, very cool stuff. This is the crux of what I do in my exercise practice to help people move and exercise pain-free, help them have more confidence in their body, help them move smoother, is work with this same methodology just by identifying where these deficits are in their body, the big elephants in the room, these key lesions, so to speak, helping them improve that. So just for quick review and reference point again here, if we know there's a lack of mobility and lack of output in an area and it's tight and we can identify the area that is not supporting that joint as well, one, we can do some post-activation potentiation, PAP, to start stimulating that area. This is largely a neurologic, I'm going to put neuro because my writing's terrible and I don't have a lot of space to lean over, neuro effect. But if we do this repeatedly every day, I'm going to put ED for every day. That's what that means, people. Get your heads out of the gutter. If I put that there for every day, we will start learning to use that area better and better. And then from there, step number 2, we can start working on the traditional, I'll put traditional exercise here kind of in brackets, right? We start working on increasing muscle size, which is going to be almost like the raw horsepower engine of that area. We can start working on increasing the endurance at that point, so it sticks around longer. We can even start working on a little bit more in different ways the rate of force development, which means that you can start using it quicker and faster and sooner and sooner. And believe it or not, that happens with post-activation potentiation in and of itself. And so this is how, in a nutshell, exercise will help you with the tightnesses in your body, help you do more things that you want to do for in your day-to-day, give you more endurance and more strength to do them by addressing the key lesions in your body with exercise through post-activation potentiation initially, small little dosings of exercises, non-fatiguing, and then moving into more traditional exercise, we call muscle size, endurance, strength, rate of force development, all that fun stuff. And ultimately, it's these things that increase mobility. Because what is mobility? Ultimately, it's your ability to contract your muscles and improve your strength in end range joint positions. If I don't have the strength to bring my arm up overhead, I'm going to lack mobility. But if I get the strength to move this arm up overhead, I've increased my mobility, I've increased my flexibility. And if I want to be able to do that over and over again and just keep that there and have this be something that's easy for me in day-to-day life, what do I have to do? I have to start training it more and more and more. Yes, everybody, flexibility and mobility is synonymous with strength and strength endurance in the positions that you want to be able to visit with your joints day to day. If you are strong in every end range position, shoulder all the way overhead, arm all the way back, neck twisting and turning as far as it can be, flexing, extending at the trunk, full knee extension, full knee flexion, full all that stuff. If you're strong in those positions, you'll have tons of mobility. But if you're not strong in those positions and you're weak and your body can't figure out what to do, it doesn't have the endurance to do things as long as it wants to, things are going to shut down. Things are going to shut down more in some areas than others. And when things shut down more in one area than another, your body begins to compensate in some way, shape, or form to keep you moving, to hold you together. And once those areas start getting stressed out way too long, they start getting tight and achy. We have to address, right, those lower key lesion root causes if we want to move and feel our best. I hope this has given you some inspiration or some insight as to why exercise is going to be the best thing you can do to help your body feel less achy and less tight. Because ultimately, it's about training your body through post-activation, potentiation, and exercise to move and feel its best. Take care, everyone.